If you are a parent, today's episode is just for you. Today on Bridges, we're going to be talking about growing kids with character. I'm Monica Schmelter, and I'm so glad that you could join us for Bridges today. My guest today is going to join us by video conference. Her name is Hettie Brittz, and we're going to talk about growing kids with character. And Hettie, I'm glad you could join us by video conference today.
Monica, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited about this discussion.
Yes. Well, you know, I'm excited anytime I hear about something that's helpful for parents and growing kids with character. That's what most parents want, and yet most of us, you know, we haven't been parents even for a few days or a few weeks, and we realize, oh, this might be a little tougher than what we were thinking.
That definitely was my experience, Monica. I thought I was so ready because I studied a lot of child development, studying as a speech pathologist, and I really wanted this baby. We waited 6 years for our first child. So, of course, I would be ready. I mean, I read the books, I did the classes, and then I wasn't ready. And I think what I most wasn't ready for was for how different she was going to be to what I had in mind. Not a disappointment, just a mystery, just completely not like me.
Exactly, and for most parents, new moms or new dads, you know, that I've talked to, it's not disappointment. It is, I love this little person so much and I just don't know what to do. And then for people that I know that have multiple children, it's like, okay, but they're all different. And how do I know? You know, how do I know how to respond? So how does the book Growing Kids with Character, how does it help us?
Well, I always understood, you know, these personality profiles and leadership style profiles that are out there for parents and adults and leaders in the workplace. But it's so hard to read children because they can't, you know, look at 4 words and decide I'm that word. Right. So this book does that. It gives you access to an online platform where you, together with your child or other and that really know your child well, can sit and look at scenarios that kids and say, oh yeah, she would have done it that way, or I think she would say that, and together discern who this child is. And then the book breaks it down to raising all these different kinds of kids, and even the personality types that are mixtures, because that's literally what temperament means. It means mixture. And we know that each little kid is going to be so unique. They're not going to fit into boxes, but they still are somewhere in the big picture. I mean, everything in God's creation has order. Right. The birds are not like the reptiles, and the insects are not like the mammals. So we can still see traits that will guide us.
Yeah, and I think that's what this is a lot about, is to help us, to give us a guide, sort of a roadmap to helping these children, these little people that God entrusts us with. And you've got, you talk about the online assessments and so forth, and there's a term in the book that I saw, I think, tall trees profile. What is that?
That is what we call the test. And the thing is, when I started studying temperament to figure out this daughter of mine who was so different from me, I didn't like the labels for a lot of the ways we talk about temperament and personality styles. So I came up with tree metaphors, because trees to me are alive. They go through different seasons. And even though they may be a species, they're still each completely unique. And that's where the term tall trees comes from. Yeah. So tall trees profiles is a selection of profiles where parents can do a parent profile, or they can do this child profile or a teen profile if their kids are older than 12 years old.
Yeah. And another thing, Hettie, about trees is that they're all beautiful and they all serve a purpose. And they're all different, but we need all of them. And that's how it is with children and with parents, if we can kind of get that. And you're using the word temperament. So at what age does a child have a temperament, or are they born with it?
Yes, I believe they are. I want to call temperament the soul's DNA because it predicts how we will feel and express feelings, how we will interpret the world around us. And I believe in intelligent and wise design, not just actually intelligent, I believe in brilliant design. And puts our DNA together with such care. Why wouldn't he do the same with our soul and wire us in a way that beautifully fits with the purpose that he has for us? I believe he does. And I believe that passion that's in us, that is such a core part of temperament, is supposed to act like a compass needle. It's supposed to point to my true north and take me to what God has for me within his body, within the world, and the same for our kids.
Well, and that explains a lot, and I agree with that. I think anybody that has more than one child can see that that child has a temperament and is distinctly different than their other sibling, even though they're in the same house and being raised by the same two parents. We see these differences. Yes. So how did this, as you were learning, I think you mentioned that you had a daughter.
Yes.
How did that help you?
Well, the thing is, when you have a personality clash with your child, you immediately go into the question, is it me or is it you?
Right.
And that's not the right question. The question is, how do I love you so that you will know that you are loved? Yes. And how do I meet your core needs? But then at the same time, we are not called to figure out our child's temperament and then to do everything exactly the way they want it done, because that way they will never grow, because the world will never do that for them. When they get out there as adults, the world will not say, how would you like me to speak to you? How would you like your environment to be? What's your core need today? But when kids are loved and accepted for who they are because we embrace their personality type, then we can stretch them a little bit. And then life can be a little uncomfortable here and there. And they know it doesn't come from a place of hate or rejection. It comes from that parenting place where God also prunes us. Same place.
As you explain that, that makes a lot of sense to me, because my next question was going to be, okay, but like if you coddle and cater to your child's temperament the whole way through, when they're little, as toddlers and then school age, they won't ever, the whole world is not going to do that for our children. And so then that would seem to me that would be a great big negative. But you're saying that we help meet that need for unconditional love, challenge them just a little bit and help them to understand how the world maybe would perceive them and how to navigate through?
Yes. Yes, because we see how God approaches different personality types. A Moses, for example, is the personality type that I call a boxwood tree. Now, if you go into nature and you look at boxwoods, they're always perfectly pruned, or they artfully shaped into these topiary trees, or they're these perfectly square hedges, those straight lines. You can identify with that personality. A child like that wants advance warning. You can't tell them now that we're leaving in 2 minutes. You should have told them, and yesterday we are going out tomorrow, and then as they get up, remember at 2 o'clock this, how it is. So with that personality type, which is Moses, God met him at the burning bush, and God knew it was going to be a tough journey to get his nation led out of Egypt. And at the burning bush, God told Moses exactly what would happen. He told him about the 10 plagues. He told him that he would eventually lead them out, but that Pharaoh would give them a hard time. He had the whole story up front. That is a core need of a boxwood, and God indulged that need with him. But we know the story, how many times God stretched Moses and asked him to have faith where he couldn't see what was ahead of him. So it's always that balance.
Yeah. I think too, as I looked through the book and as I read it, and even with this example that you just gave us, Moses, that if we understand how we're wired and how other people kind of experience the world, it helps us to affirm other people and understand that that other person may be a person who needs to know in advance. They don't like surprises, and so that's how I can help deal with them, even in the workplace or at school or at church. So I can see how this would have some far-reaching effects, if we understand it. Now, one of the things you talk about, the different types in the tree profiles, Many times people will say labels are bad. Would that apply to this at all, or?
Yes, the thing is, if I say that you are a TV presenter, then I've used the label, but I've not limited you. I've not said that you can't be a good mother too. I just described one of your functions. And that's what we want to do here. We want to say, if I'm saying you're a box tree, I'm saying you're going to help us create order. You're going to remind us of what is right and what is important. You're going to mind the details that are really important. If I say to a friend of mine, hey, my mom's coming over and she's a vegetarian, then I'm saying vegetarian because I want that person to accommodate my mom and to understand her and not to take offense if she doesn't want to eat the ribeye. So labels are very useful when we don't use them in a way where we limit people's potential. And we take great care at Tall Trees never to do that. We're talking about your beauty and your contribution. Mm-hmm. That's what we use it for.
Yeah. And what kind of feedback are you getting from parents in terms of, you know, because so many times parents are overwhelmed by their children. They love them, and yet there's this sense of, I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to discipline this one. I can't. Mm-hmm. What kind of feedback do you get from parents?
Well, the profiles have been out for 7 years. And this book has, you know, the first version of this book is 9 years old. And it's in its 15th print in South Africa. So we know that this has been tried and tested. And parents live by this. They say, we talk tree talk all the time. And our kids will come home from school and they will say, Mom, I know why this teacher doesn't like me. It's because she's a boxwood and she wants things like this. And I'm a palm tree and I'm all over the show. She just doesn't understand me, Mom. But what that child has really achieved is that beautiful thing to live and let live, and to not take things personally, and to even have insight into his teacher. So the earlier we equip children with this information, the sooner they can stand up and say, no, actually, do you know what? There's nothing wrong with me for not wanting to go first. I am a pine tree. And what pine trees do is we accommodate, we give other people the opportunity first. We're peacemakers. We don't need to be pioneers and peacemakers. We're peacemakers. It's empowering. That's the most common word we hear.
Yeah, and I can see how that would be empowering and would be affirming to the child and to the parent, you know, to be able to look at your child and see what their temperament is like and how God has wired them to be able to contribute to this world and to be able to foster that. Those are all things that are really super important. So that's some great feedback. We've got to take a break, Hettie, here in just a moment. So just stay with us, and we want for all of you to stay with us. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue to talk about growing kids with character.
You can purchase a copy of today's show for $15. Call us at 615-754-0039 or send a check to the address on the screen. Please mention the program number on the screen.
The blood of Christ is the only cure. It gets down to the root of every single thing that ails us. There's not an addiction, there's not a generational curse, there's not any root of sin. There's nothing that the blood of Jesus cannot cleanse.
Visit monicaschmelter.com to schedule Monica to speak at your event.
If you're just joining us today on Bridges, we are talking about growing kids with confidence, and Hettie Brittz is the author of this book, Growing Kids with Character, and she's with me today by video conference. And Hettie, it's just been so good to be able to talk with you today, and we've been talking about the Tall Trees profile. And in the book, you talk a lot about the 4 types. Maybe you could just outline and overview that for us?
Yes, I briefly mentioned the boxwood tree, who's so precise and a little nervous and needs advance warning. They're a little thin-skinned, like their natural counterpart that needs to be pruned exactly right and wants to preferably be in a pot or be on the edge of the garden where you can see, you know, where the lines are. boxwood tree wood is also used to make chess pieces. And that says a lot about how this personality type is. You know, they make their moves carefully, they think ahead, they plan, and they play by the rules, and everything's either black or white. So that's maybe a way to remember them. Um, and then I said that the pine tree is a peacemaker and not necessarily a pioneer. My daughter is a pine tree, and I'm clearly not. I'm a little loud, and I'm more of the pioneer, where she is very much the peacemaker, the relational, contented personality type. So my challenge was to get her going. My husband also has a lot of pine tree in his personality, and he always jokingly says, you know, that the more you try and light a fire on them, the more smoke you get in your eyes. So he calls them wet wood. And people who are raising pine trees will know, or who may be married to one, you know, the more you pull and push, the more stubborn they become. And when you look at a pine tree in nature, it actually has a taproot that draws water and very deep down. So if a pine tree is, you know, 10 feet tall, chances are the taproot's 15 feet down into the ground. And you get to, I mean, you encounter that when you try and move them fast and you try and get them to change and you try and get them to participate in everything. They'd rather just watch. They can, from, you know, from the bench, they can play the game. They don't need to be on the field. And they can go home afterwards and say, it was so much fun. And we'll go, no, but you didn't do anything. They go, no, I really just had fun watching. So that's who they are. And I highly value their ability to know what life's really about. They have this old soul wisdom about them. The reason I picked pine trees, because when you step into a pine tree forest, there's just this calm that comes over you, and the scent of that pine just tells you it's time to slow down. And they have the art of slowing down. They have that down, you know. And then the more outgoing trees are the rose bush and the palm tree. Now with rose, you can hear there are two things going on there. It's the flowers, which talks about their achievement and their productivity and them putting things out there and getting stuff done. But then there are the thorns. And these are those kids who arrive in the world with, I am the boss, can't you read? And then we can't read. And it's, you know, it's a lot of this. And some people say, you know, there's a lot of blood, figuratively speaking, in that phase. Well, yes, if you want a rose bush that really is full of flowers, you need to prune it down to bare sticks. And unfortunately, this is that personality that needs a lot of discipline. God did it that way too. With Paul, he didn't tap him on the shoulder on his way to Damascus and say, excuse me, we need to talk. He struck him with blindness. And he changed his name from Saul to Paul, and Paul means little one. So God effectively said to him, you think you're the boss? No, not really. I'm not going to read what you want me to read. I'm not going to respect the fact that you think you should run everything. So firm hand with these kids, it can be a power struggle, but man, they make us proud. They do change the world like Paul did. And then the palm trees, oh my goodness, they're a treat to raise. They're so much fun. They're so creative and out of the box. They remind me of Hawaii and Miami. I mean, it's fun in the sun. And you can just, if you want to imagine their world, just ask yourself, does this fit in Hawaii? Homework? No. So we're going to have a problem with homework. Schedules? No. So we're going to have a problem with schedules. Budgets? No. So we're going to have a problem with money. So they are just not created for the box. And we get a lot of reward in raising them with their joy and their jokes and their sense of humor and all of that. But we also get surprises here and there because they are not known for thinking before they act. So they learn from these painful consequences like Peter did. Loud at the mouth, Lord, I'll never leave you. I'll rather die. And then when it comes to the crunch, then the stamina isn't always there. So that gives you more or less an idea of the four. And of course, these combine in any wonderful combination, 2 trees or 3 trees rolled into one.
Yeah. So when I listen to you describe those different profiles, you know, I know as a parent, most parents that have multiple children, you know, what we strive for is to treat them all equally and treat them the same. But what you're describing to me, like it would be really hard to treat them all the same because they would respond to different kinds of, motivation, different kinds of discipline. So how does a parent do that?
Well, I don't know if you ever saw some of the Narnia movies or read the books, but C.S. Lewis had this thing that we hear in many of the books when one of the children would speak to the lion, Aslan, who symbolizes God, and say, why did you do this to that one? Or what about this one? Then he would say, we're not talking about him right now, we're talking about you. And that's kind of how we go about with these kids. When a child complains that we are not fair, what we should be hearing is not, I want the same as what he has. What we should be hearing is, I think one of my core needs are neglected. And so the answer is not to give them what the other child has, because it will not work, but to determine what core need right now is not met. So we respond to, Mom, you're not fair. You don't, I had to go home had to go to bed much younger than my brother, can, or whatever. Then we go into, okay, let's talk about your bedtime. Do you feel you need more freedom? Do you want to stay awake later? Let's see how we can move that rule without having adverse consequences in your schoolwork or whatever. So that may just be a child who says, I want more freedom. He's not really saying, I want to be treated exactly like my brother who is older or younger than me. So we don't go into that space. My oldest daughter, the pine tree that I spoke about, she always wanted to be tickled and swung around like a brother. She felt like, that's what she wanted. And then when you did it, she couldn't enjoy it at all. And she couldn't find the words to say what it was that she really wanted. And that is why we developed the profile, because the profile doesn't just give words to the parent. This is how you speak to your child. This is what you're going to need to focus on in discipline. It gives word to the child who is not yet able to verse and express what it is that they need.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense to me, because the same style doesn't work with everybody. So it makes sense that we need to do what's best for our kid. The title of the book is, of course, Growing Kids with Character. Tell me how, the tall trees profile and the things that we're talking about, how does that translate into our children growing into having good character?
When we think about character, each of us has a list of preferences in the back of our mind. So if I say a child with good character, I may be thinking self-control, sense of responsibility, drive. You may be thinking kindness, loyalty, humility. It's not the same child we're talking about. It's, I describe maybe a rose bush who is spirit-filled, and you describe a pine tree who is spirit-filled. So we are, at first, we need to start with understanding we cannot have a set of preferable characteristics that we think our child should fit into. We should understand that God expresses his character in sets of characteristics through different people. No individual can show God's face to the world, but together as a body and together as a family and sometimes together as a couple, we reflect something of his face. That's how we wanted to do that. So that's our first little disclaimer is we do not get to choose which characteristics our kids should predominantly show. But we get to look at the characteristics that typically come with their personality style and say, these ones are godly. And we want to nurture them. And they are clues to our child's passion, purpose, and destiny. We want to nurture those and create opportunities for our children to use those and develop those. And these are not Christ-like. And I have my own set that are not Christ-like. And these are the things that we're going to focus on in discipline. Because if I just have a preference and all I want is for my child to be confident and that's all I focus on, then it's very likely that I'm going to miss some of the ungodly things that are going to become characteristics if I don't discipline into them.
And you just said something there, Hettie, that's really important, because most parents, whether it's intentional or not intentional, we kind of have a picture when we have our children of what we want them to be like, or we imagine that they're going to turn out to be like people in our family. And sometimes people will have children that are very different in personality than we are. Does the book Growing Kids with Character help parents grow in our characters? We learn how to love and nurture little people who are like really different than us?
Yes, because there is a chapter called "All the Trees in One Garden," and then we specifically talk about what would I need to do if I'm a rosebush parent and I'm so driven and I'm so fast, and achievement is what it's about for me, and work ethic. And I'm raising a palm tree who's there to bring joy and bring people together and inspire. What are the things I need to be mindful of? So yes, absolutely. All those different interactions between the personality types in parenting are unpacked so that we can start with ourselves. And right in the introduction to the book, we talk about readiness for parenting. And one of the requirements to really be ready for parenting is for me to submit to God as the great gardener and say, Lord, if I do not allow you to work with what is ungodly in my life and to shape what does reflect Christ, if I don't allow that pruning, then I do not have the right to prune my child's character. So prune me first.
Yeah, I'm really glad that that's in the book. That's so important. We've got just a few seconds left. As I understand it, you're in the States and you're available to do some speaking and things like that?
Yes. Yes, I would absolutely love to. I'm in Tennessee, but I travel, and people can log on to HettieBrittz.com and see where I am or invite me. I'd be happy to travel.
Yeah, well, you've got a lot of wisdom to share. So I want to thank you for joining us by video conference today. It's been good to talk to you.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Monica.
You are so welcome. The name of the book is Growing Kids with Character. The author is Hettie Brittz, and I think we can all learn a lot from it. We're out of time. Goodbye, and God bless you.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org.
When I truly turned my heart to the Lord, He took every sin I ever did away from me.
Amen.
He took all the bad things I did. He took away everything that I felt like I felt short.
God is so good. God healed me, and doctors told me that disease was something that could never be cured. It can be controlled.
The start is what stops most people. You know, it's no good to have a big dream if you're not putting yourself in motion to go after that.
Is that butterfly, that excitement of the new relationship, once that goes away, what you're left with, is that something that you're okay with?
And once they start buying into the truth about themselves, then they can begin to change, that process of change in their life.
Prayer changes things. If you need prayer, write to the address on the screen. Call 615-754-0039 or email prayer@ctntv.org.
Join the Bridges community on Facebook. Visit Facebook and search for Bridges with Monica. We would love to connect with you.